Today we are looking at idolatry, and for those of you who are staying home for other reasons, try not to feel convicted. Okay, I'm just kidding. I wanted to dig them. All right, so back to this. So again, what we're doing is we're going through Luther's small catechism because, as Luther said, you can never outgrow it. It's always something you come back to. You can never master it the way you want. And it's simple teachings from the Christian faith, but it's stuff that, we need to be reconvicted of again and again and again. So today we begin our journey through the Ten Commandments. Evan is going to get bonus points for being here because he's going to go through the Ten Commandments this year. Aren't you excited? Twice you get to hear me talk about this. One time for adults, one time for the youth. All right. So first question. From your experience, what is the main thing for many people in our world today? So what defines people? What drives people? What is the main thing?
Money.
Money? Power.
Those two just go hand in hand.
Yeah. It's like we're writing like a 70s protest song here. Anything else? What is the main thing that drives people?
Family.
Family. Yeah, I think that would be more of a subtle one that can convict you. If you find idolatry with your family, it can be tough. Envy.
Jealousy.
Faith.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Trying to think of safety. I think one as a pastor I see a lot is almost a sense of stability. Things to be going predictable almost. Control, yeah. In what ways does the main thing in one's life often shape everything else? So if my main thing is success, if that's what I'm looking for in my life, how might that shape everything else in my life? It's kind of a basic question, but...
The way you make decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I guess it's what success is to you, though.
Was that?
It depends what success is.
Yeah,
to you.
I guess that's true.
Yeah.
I gotta get too smart. I gotta get with my definition a little more. If my success as a pastor defines me, so I want to have the biggest church, the most robust teaching. How might that influence other areas of my life? But not in a good way. So that's a good thing to have. But if that's these numbers of
You might become pretty pretentious.
Yeah.
It's all about money, raising money, less about the faith.
Mm-hmm.
Probably be Catholic at that point.
Yeah, it might impact my family. Work with these people. Definitely impact my family. They'd get less of dad at home.
It impacts you.
Yeah, my health. Yeah.
That's all you're thinking about.
Yeah.
That's your main motivation. So everything, all your plans, everything's driven
Yes.
to that point.
Yeah. So right now it's usually coffee and rest. Now that's my two adult. And what kind of guitar I'm going to get on sale somewhere. But yeah, so yeah, it would totally. Yeah, you're totally right. It would destroy my health because I'd be worried about it at night. I wouldn't sleep because there's a lot of things to worry about. And if I'm committing idolatry with, especially the pastor or any of your jobs, then that worry that I can usually leave at home, I'd leave out the door at home, would consume me at night and all that stuff. So, yeah. All right, so from the small catechism, you shall have no other gods. What does this mean, Luther asks? We should fear, love, and trust in God above all things. So that's what that commandment's saying. So the first question to ask then is, what does it mean to have a God? And so Luther says in the large catechism, which is this guy here, a God means that from which we are to expect all good and in which we are to take refuge in all distress. Whatever you set your heart on and put your trust in is truly your God. So think about that definition. Is there anything that sticks out to you about his definition, both in the small and the large catechisms?
He's not really defining God.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
He's making it say what you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually more insightful, because in this part I didn't quote. What does he say? I actually have it right here highlighted. I have often said that confidence and faith of the heart alone make both God and an idol. If your faith and trust be right, then your God is also true. On the other hand, if your trust be false or wrong, then you don't have the true God. For these things belong together, faith and God. And then, so you totally got that. Nice job. You get a star. You get a golden star. But yeah, your faith is what makes something. Your faith and trust is what makes something God. So if my faith and trust is in my job, then you being my significance or my whatever, my worth, then I will make that job a God. Or if my faith and trust is in my family, if I define myself with how my family turns out, thank goodness I don't, then I would make that my God. He's near the hot chocolate zone right now. You're deep in it, man. All right, this is a good one from Isaiah. They have no knowledge who carry about their wooden idols and keep on praying to a God that cannot save. So again, even in the idolatrous sense, when you think about idolatry in the stereotypical sense, they're praying to that wood to save them, and so they're making that wood their God. So once again, think about some of the main things for people in the world today. How are people trusting their main things? I kind of already gave that answer. To be that from which they receive all good. I was joking. It's not true of most of the people at church, but I think a lot of times when you're dealing with chronic absences from church, and so not people that have to work nursing jobs. I want to have like a floating nurse service that floats throughout the week and will be announced what day and time it will be during the week, so we can
all meet up.
Yeah, I actually kind of want to do that. Not just Saturday, because some people have to work Saturdays. Have a different time, so it could just there's something to that.
You'd have to do it every day, though.
Yeah. Your wife gets that too. Yeah. It's but have just so you can attend sometimes, but then anyways. But a lot of times when you're dealing with chronic absences in church or dwindling attendance, a lot of times it's because people are looking and trusting for other things to receive good from. Why do I have to come here to receive word and sacrament? Because I feel better when I stay home and relax, or I feel better when I'm helping my kid do this and that. I think there is a little bit of that going on. Not that church is the end definer of that, but when I start seeing chronic absences with people, that a lot of times, when it's other things other than nursing, it's a lot of times that's what's behind that. Is
which is strange, because I feel better when I come to church.
Yeah.
It's the opposite.
Yeah.
Then the Steelers lose.
Yeah.
And I feel bad.
Then you feel bad. You're in the dust. I probably should have a Sunday night lamenting service. All right. So why do you think? And this was one of the revolutionary Luther moments for me, because there's actually a promise behind this commandment. Why do you think God does not want us to have any other gods beside Him? Don't look at the answer yet. Anyone want to take a guess? Why doesn't God want us to have any other gods? It's selfish. That's kind of what I was raised, not my parents, but I was raised with that sort of, just the way you actually go, God's just like me, me. Why doesn't God want us to have any other gods beside Him? One of the things is that behind this commandment, there's the good news that God desires to be our God. God desires to be your God. For example, when He actually gave this commandment to Israel, the first thing He says is, I am the Lord, I am Yahweh, your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. So in order to give us the gift of Himself, God forbids you to have other gods. And so when I'm busy committing a small idolatry here and there, at that point, I'm not allowing God to be my God. I am my heart. I'm not looking to Him to give me the good that He desires to give to me or what He desires to give to me, but rather I'm looking to the other thing. And so God wants to give us Himself, and that's the main reason He forbids us to have other gods. That's a pretty neat little way to look at it. I thought, I was like, man, I never thought of it that way. Because usually when you hear the Ten Commandments, you're like, so what does God require of us in this commandment? So Luther says we should fear, love, and trust God above all things. So the first thing is we are to fear him above all things. What images come to your mind when you hear the words fear God?
Judgment Day.
Judgment Day? Judgment Day. I don't know why just metal came in my head. I don't know why. Or actually more of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
It was,
Yeah.
I think about like the images that you see like with Jesus like suffering
Yeah.
in like the last part of his life.
Yeah.
And I know that was like for a greater good.
Yeah.
But, like it's still is fearful. Right?
Yeah, that is fearful. Yeah, I mean, that's, especially when you think of what's behind that, it's very fearful. Yeah. I think it kind of that stereotypical, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a movie, but that idea of, just somebody struck dead or like, when they see the, or like those passages from Isaiah where Isaiah gets a glimpse of the glory of God and he's like, oh man, I'm dead, yeah. Psalm 94. For great is the Lord and greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all gods. For all the gods of the peoples are worthless idols, but the Lord made the heavens. Splendor and majesty are before him, strength and beauty are in his sanctuary. He will judge the world in righteousness and the people in his faithfulness. And then Jesus, this is one of his more buzzkill passages, do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can both destroy the body and soul in hell. That's a fun one. So simply put, to fear God means to take him seriously as our creator and judge, and I would say in just all his bigness. And so, if I look at the world and realize that he created everything I can touch, smell, see, feel. Anyways, and then everything even I can't that's outside of my perception, that's fearful. And then if I think about the fact that, we would be, and there's the Jesus part behind that too, but, he's our judge, that's like, ooh, there's something big there. I need to run to Christ for salvation. Second, we are to love him above all things. What images come to your mind when you hear the word love God? What might it look like to love him above all things?
This might be a weird one, but seeing Jesus on the cross, taking away all of our sins, that's him loving us.
Yeah.
And how I see it.
And when you look at his love for us, does birth a love for him. That's pretty cool.
I think of when the children came to Christ, it was as though whatever they did, just like our own earthly parents.
Yeah.
Your child does something wrong. Okay, we discipline them, but we still love them.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way God is. He
Yeah.
disciplines us, but he still loves us in spite of
Yeah.
what we do and what we say.
Yeah.
Because even when Adam and Eve ate the tree and they were told, to get out of the Garden of Eden. Okay, God disciplined them, but he still loved them because he created them.
Yeah.
And eventually made a way for that relationship to be restored.
What might it look like for us to love God above all things?
Put him first.
Put him first, yeah.
I think what we're doing here. Because the more we know about God, the more we come.
Yeah. Just like as I want to know my spouse. Yeah, I couldn't.
The more love that you have for that person, it just kind of overflows into other areas.
Yeah.
Love is rooted in the knowledge about that person.
I quote this guy a couple of times, and I'm totally blanking out his name, but He is one of the early Christians to be killed. But one of his things were, give me death, give me the tearings of my flesh and my bones being crushed, all this stuff. He's like, but give me Christ at the end, and so that I might attain Christ. So what he was talking about, he faced the very real danger of, for his faith, believing that he was going to be thrown to the lions with Rome, by the Romans. I'll find that quote next week. But yeah, and that's also another vision, that I'd be willing, for my faith to put all things on the line if need be. Thankfully, that doesn't have to occur. And I know I wouldn't be perfect about it, obviously, but there's that sense where it's like, if I love him above all things, I'm going to put him above all things. And that Jesus gives a pretty simple definition. If you love me, you'll keep my commandments. Seriously, do. If you love me, you'll do what I say. That's how. Not that that's gets us, but that's just what it will look like. So to love and cherish God above all things, to love God above all things means to cherish and adore him more than anything else and gladly devote our lives to him. The last thing is we are to trust him above all things. So again, the same question. What images come to your mind when you hear the word trust God?
Jesus having his resurrection, and like everybody witnessing that.
Yeah, putting their lives in his hands.
Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, knowing that he is at work behind even the good and the bad and ugly.
I always think the bad's going to have a good outcome. There's a reason for the bad there.
I'm thinking letting go and letting go.
There's an element of that, yeah. Knowing that no matter how much I think over this or that situation that's going on, ultimately it's in his hands, and therefore I can let it go and go to sleep. I think the children are a good example. Just trusting. When I was a kid, I didn't really think about whether or not my dad would love me or feed me or that sort of thing, and because they were good parents, and so I trusted them. And it's the same thing with God, trusting that even if I don't understand it, where it's coming from, he's going to give me that daily bread today, even if I'm still hungry. Never have been, but even if there's a sense there where it's like, and even if I don't get, if I go to bed hungry, I still trust him as good. It's tough, but for thus said the Lord God, the Holy One of Israel, in returning and rest you shall be saved. In quietness and in trust shall be your strength. And then Philippians, you've probably all heard this one, and this is just one example of trust. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. So the fact that Paul said, don't be anxious means that they were anxious. So what he's saying is, in that anxiety, throw it to prayer and give thanksgiving to God and trust that he is for you. He is at hand. So to trust God above all things means that we rely on him to take care of us and keep all of his promises to us. This quote was too long to have in here, but this is one of my favorites. One of the things that Luther does sometimes is he will paraphrase God, in the sense of what he's saying here. And so that is as much to say. So when he's talking about this commandment, see to it that you let me alone be your God. Never seek another. Whatever you lack of good things, expect it of me and look to me for it. And whenever you suffer misfortune and distress, creep and cling to me. I will give you enough and help you out of every need. Only let not your heart cleave to or rest in any other. That's a good one. So out of these three, I'm going to skip this one question. Out of this three, what do you find the most difficult? So fear, love, trust. When you think of that, what do you find to be the most difficult?
Trust.
Okay.
I don't know if I have my life situation. I would have said trust before, but I feel like that one's easier for me now.
Well, you haven't been through anything that would make that experience.
But I literally say every day, I trust your plan. Like,
Yeah.
and I think fear, and I don't know if it's because I'm like try to be a positive person, but it's hard for me to
Yeah.
associate fear.
Yeah, I think one of the things you said, and so again, I think the Hebrew element of fear is not like, it's awe, standing in awe, like, whoa. And so what you said about the cross, that kind of got me. So like when you look at the cross of Christ, I don't mean to start to talk over you, but this is something that I've had to talk to myself about. So the cross of Christ, right there you have a demonstration of both the love and wrath of God. The wrath of God being that something needed to be done with sin, the very sin that I'm carrying. And so that was placed upon Christ and dealt with. But also the magnificent love of God that, God made a way for both that wrath and love to reconcile, and that I can come to God freely. So it both says, oh my gosh, that love is bigger than I can imagine, but oh my goodness, my sin costs more than I can ever imagine. But salvation is even bigger than that. So there I go, I am just awed by his love. And so it's not a fear, it's just, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's a good, I really wasn't thinking of it in that
that's the language it's taking, but it's
It's also, I think, a form of respect.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You see that
Yeah.
respect.
Especially when I see what my sin cost and what judgment I deserve, there is a respect that comes from that, definitely. I like that.
And the only reason I say trust is when you're going through it,
Mm-hmm.
you're like,
Yeah.
is this going to end? How's it going to end?
Yeah.
I mean, for you, I imagine that was terrible throughout that entire process.
Yeah, but I really there's this little book, I think you might have recommended it to me, but it was like every day, like about trusting and being thankful for something. And
Yeah.
I don't know, just like made me have a different perspective.
Yeah.
It's this stupid quote. No, it's a good quote, but I can't think of what it is. But it was one of those stuck to me. You don't know, like you don't understand that God is all you have until He's all that you have.
Yeah.
And so there's something by going
That's
through
a good
the
quote.
crucible. That's a paraphrase. But it is. I'll try to remember who wrote that. But yeah, I mean that's you got to experience. We've all had that in different ways. My anxiety in college, that was my watershed for me. But it's just like, and that's one of the things that suffering is. I mean, God, even if it's complete evil, God will still even use that to the greater good of growing you in faith. And it did for you. It did for me.
Mm-hmm.
When you were mentioning that, I was thinking of something that I pray about every day, and it says, nothing can happen to me without it being Father filtered. He knows what's going to happen from that day. And hopefully He will give me the strength and discernment and wisdom on how to well, I don't say react, respond. Because reaction to me brings up a lot of bold actions and actions that you may not want to do. So if you say response, it kind of softens it a little bit. But that's what I pray for every day.
I like that.
For me, I think it would be. This is going to sound really bad for your pastor to say this. Well, it's all three. It is actually but there's a problem with me and idolatry and like when it comes to loving Him, trusting Him, and fearing Him above all things. When I think about that, like my biggest issue is my problems. I can see my problems. They're right there. It's obvious that they're my problems. That thing that I'm fearing, whether it's like that huge whatever, I can see that, or that thing that, let's say my wife, or let's say I'm loving, let's say I'm not right now at this present moment committing idolatry with my children. Like I can see my kids. I want them to do well, and they were adorable at one point. Now they're adolescents. Sorry, but like I can see them. God, I cannot see. And so there's that. I struggle with that, and it's not that it's like, oh, I don't believe you because I can't see you, but it almost feels less immediate sometimes. So it's like that constantly having to remind myself of things above, seek your mind on things above, things that you can't see. But that takes a lot of trust to believe that what you can't see is more important and more real than what you can see. And so it's more of a functional thing. So I functionally think of how I go about this commandment, course, when I'm suffering, I'm almost better at it. But when I'm just things are in the day-to-day, I just notice that sometimes my heart leans to things that it can see. And it requires a conscious effort to not to love God above. Well, of course it should, but it's just that's why that's the struggle. That's the struggle for me. All right. And I think what else we have here. All right. Forget about the first question. One of the things, and there's a book on the bottom, for more on idolatry and rooting out idols in your life, check out Timothy Keller's Counterfeit Gods. If there's ever a book on how you deal with idolatry, that is one of the best ones I ever come across. This guy just recently passed away, but he, wonderful book, he has an appendix that's like finding and rooting out your idols, has an exercise you can go through and that sort of stuff. And that's been a great book. And so one of the things that he tipped me off to, and this is the third question down here, are ways that areas of anxiety, sadness, discontent, and anger reveal subtle idolatry in your heart. And so looking at areas where you're feeling just emotionally volatile. And so, for example, when I would struggle with anger in the past, it would be, because one of your idols is being threatened. And so like when kids were younger, I would snap a little quicker than I do now. And it was just because I noticed that they were stepping on what my priority was for the day. And so like when Zoe would not sleep well, I get very mad. And why am I mad? It's not, she can't help it, but it was because I had a certain way I wanted my day to go, and you're not preventing that. And that was a huge thing. I never realized that my anger was actually a symptom of an idolatry, of me making my priority for the day my idol. And so, so that's one little tipper, is like anytime you have areas of anxiety, not all the time, sadness, discontent, anger, a good question to ask God is, all right, where am I having idolatry that is causing me to have these emotions? Not every time, but sometimes. Actually, almost all the time. Actually, I'm gonna be honest. I'm trying to be nice. Yeah.
Just having them under teeth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's yeah.
That's so true. I have to think about why I'm reacting or responding.
And not that you can't be mad at them. There's times that is the appropriate response. But I just noticed that whenever you notice that anger out of proportion to what they're doing, or especially when they can't help it, there's something wrong.
Well said.
Was it?
You need a separate class just for that.
Yeah.
But
I'm thinking about like the Steeler game today. Like I'm gonna want to watch it. And if they're wanting to do something, I'm gonna be like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, it's it's the key there is like you have to be healthier, because you do need time. You should have things that you like to do.
Yeah.
But it's also it's just your emotions, and I think that's a good way. Just if they're impinging on this sort of thing, causes you to react way over much, then maybe there's some idolatry there. But it's just that weird thing. One of the prayers I've been asking God a lot lately, because you notice sometimes when I get home from work, and there's always the temptation to lock yourself into your hobby or this other thing or whatever. It's like, all right, God, help me to, your goals for me is to love and serve my neighbor, so help that to be what I do. And so if me taking time to myself to, let's say, do my hobby, play guitar or something, is loving and serve my neighbor, because I'm going to be really annoyed and antsy in front of my kids, then that'll do that. But if loving my neighbor means, putting that aside for right now because Isaiah really needs me or Kendra needs me, then yeah. But that's a good question to ask yourself too. If you being with the Steelers, if you're having that time to enjoy a game, that's something you need, so be it. But if there's, making any sense there, it's just there's a way to look at that. Yeah.
That was good. We should end on that.
All right, one of the ways, the last question is, I'm just going to read it. In what ways does faith in Jesus, and his work enable us to do this thing, to keep the main thing? In Jesus, forgiveness. We have God's forgiveness in our idolatry. Coming to God, he gives us fear, love, and trust, gives us grace to trust. So therefore, no matter how far we've fallen, in repentance, turning from our sin, we can always come to him for grace to walk in that obedience. And that's really what it is, because The great Calvin, that's the patron saint of the Presbyterian Church, once said, our hearts are idol factories, and so we're gonna pump them out daily, almost by minute, and so we're gonna need to know that we can come to Him. And then, sort of in closing, one of the things that was really helpful in Luther, he wrote a book to his barber, and if you ever want a copy, I have thousands of them, called A Simple Way to Pray. And so his barber asked him as he was cutting his hair, how do I pray? And so God gave this really, not God, oh gosh, there's an idolatry there. Luther, sorry, gave this really simple way to write this. And he said, I make a wreath of 4 strands of each commandment. 1, instruction, I read each commandment, consider what it is teaching me, as intended by the commandment, and think about what God is earnestly demanding of me. 2, thanksgiving, I use the commandment to thank God for something. So, for example, like, God, thank you that you desire to be my God. 3, I confess my sin, God, I have sinned before you. And then 4th, I use the commandment to say a prayer using these or similar words. So then he goes to, we'll talk about in a sec. So he uses this commandment then to pray to God. And so he, for example, taking his inspiration from the first commandment, he says, "Oh my God and Lord, by your grace, help me daily to better learn and comprehend your command, and give it sincere attention. Guard my heart so that I no longer forget and become unthankful, so that I do not seek consolation in any gods on earth or any creature, but rather truly cling to you alone and purely, as my only God, my dear Lord and Father." So, simple. If you're ever lacking things to pray, think about the commandments and turn them into a prayer and that sort of thing. So that's where we're going to, this is for you to take home, but, think about how you can turn during the week, how you can turn this commandment into a prayer for your life. And let me turn my thing off. My Meebo keeps on disconnecting. You too at home, I will have this on the outline on the YouTube page.